Dominica, the Caribbean, and the rest of the world. Welcome back to our Push Past 10 platform. As you know, here at Push Past 10, we're all about promoting Dominica, the Caribbean region, and having those conversations that help to move Dominica and the Caribbean region forward. This evening, we are joined by Dr. Thomson Fontaine. As you know, he's the newly elected leader of the United Workers' Party in Dominica, and he has agreed to have his first official interview with us this evening to tell us all about the plans, the vision, the challenges. So much to cover this evening as Dr. Fontaine is joining us. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to bring him in and begin the conversation. Dr. Fontaine, how are you?
I'm doing well. A very good night to you. It's been a long day, but nonetheless a good one. Thank you for
Yes,
having me, and a
yes.
very good evening to your listeners.
Yes, and thank you for taking time out to be here with us and for making us your first official interview. You know, we are about 19,000 visitors strong a month on Push Past 10, and we are mainly Dominicans in Dominica and the diaspora overseas who are very passionate about Dominica and very passionate about moving Dominica forward. So we want to invite everybody to come on in, share the light, let everyone know that we are here for this important conversation. And as we get started again, Dr. Fontaine, congratulations on being elected to the leader of the United Workers' Party. And just tell us, how do you feel about being elected to this position?
Wow. Well, thank you, Simon. Thank you again. It's a very exciting time. I can tell you, it's a very exciting time for the party, for Dominica, for what it means to have new leadership in place and to really focus on what a, a party like ours can do. A party, as you know, we've been in opposition for the past 22 years, last in office between 1995 and 2000. So that this offers an opportunity for us, especially as we engage in the task of electoral reform, ensuring that we get electoral reform. It's an exciting time all around, and I'm really happy to be a part of this very interesting and important time in our country's history.
Yes, and just tell us about the other folks who were elected yesterday.
Yes, so we have as the deputy political leader, Mr. Clement Marcelin, as the president, Mr. Lennox Linton. The vice president of the party is now Ms. Francesca Joseph. Our general secretary is Mr. Nicholas George. Our deputy secretary is Ms. Diane Victor. Our PRO is Ms. Barnes. And our international secretary is Dr. T.C. Thomas. So it is, and of course we also have three trustees, our founder and the former Prime Minister of Dominica, Mr. Edison James. There is also Mr. Norris Prevost, former minister in the government of the United Workers' Party, and newly elected was Ms. Ernie Johnfin, who contested the elections for the party in 2019.
Yes, and I'm sure they all have very important roles to play. But I think we are primarily interested in what is the role of the leader of the party. And before you respond, let me just go ahead and acknowledge everyone who's joining us via the Facebook Live: Avril Bertrand, Sandra Norris. Thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to share the live because we want to hear from you as well. You know, unlike some folks who believe that Dominica belongs to them, we believe that Dominica belongs to everyone. And so you too have an important contribution to make in this conversation and in the plans for moving Dominica forward. So, Dr. Fontaine, what is the role of the leader?
The political leader of the party provides political direction to the party. He or she is responsible for ensuring that the party is prepared for any general election that may be called. He has to ensure and actually look after the interests of the party, and the party members look after the welfare of the party supporters. Also, the party leader plays a critical role in setting the vision for the party, in because particularly his role is to ensure that the party can assume the reins of government, and so the strategic vision, strategic direction is expected to come from the political leader, and also as a leader of men and women to ensure that the party is successful. And so a great part of my work going forward is to ensure the success of the party. And the way this success is measured is by being able to convince a significant part of the population that you are the better party to run the affairs of the country. And so in a lot of ways, the political leader is the face of the party, the political leader, and in fact, and for a number of countries, the fortunes, the ability of the party to either attain office or not rests upon the abilities of its leader. So it's a huge undertaking. It's a huge, I would not like to say burden, but that's sometimes the way it feels like, because you have this burden of responsibility to really, because you have thousands and thousands of people who are looking up to you as a leader to be successful, to be able to convince persons to join the party, to convince persons to abandon their previous support for another party and come on board. So it's a major undertaking, but it's one which I believe I'm well prepared for. I would not have offered myself for that position if I did not think I was prepared to do that. Is a role that I think all of my combined experiences over the years can now allow me to play. And in the case of Dominica, particularly for our party, the ability to attract the young people, to be able to provide them with a vision that they can hang on to, a vision of job creation, a vision of opportunities, a vision of higher education, all of those things that can be appealing. All of that has to be neatly packaged and in a way sold to the public so that they can buy into it, so that they feel that they can be part of this party. So, it's about setting the tone. It's about making it comfortable for persons to feel that they can not only support the party or join the party, but that they can provide support for the party. And so all of those issues, the ability, of course, to raise, financing for the party, because as you know, if you're going to run a successful campaign, you need resources, you need financial resources. So the ability of the leader to be able to attract resources becomes of paramount importance. So all of those things you have to basically be able to do, and to do it successfully so that the party can be successful.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we're coming to find out is we need so much more education on, in terms of elections and our constitution in Dominica. So one of the things that I'm sure a lot of us would like to know is, does the role of leadership assume that you will be prime minister in the event that you're elected to political office?
Well, that has been the norm. Typically, the political leader, once he is able to win, because the assumption is that, well, okay, let me do it this way. For the position of prime minister, it is the person who commands the support of the majority of elected members. So that means the prime minister himself has to be elected. And in addition to him, he has to have, in the case of Dominica with 21 constituencies, he has to have an additional he has to have an additional 10 persons that he can relate to. So in that case, it becomes critical for that person to be able to command the support of these 10 other persons, and it's on that basis he becomes a prime minister. Typically, it is the leader of the party that goes into the general elections who comes out in that particular position.
Yes, yes, very well said. Thank you for that explanation. Now, just kind of tell us about the vision. I think what most Dominicans want to know at this point is, what is going to be different? What is the new vision for the United Workers' Party, and how will various segments of our population, such as the youth, the diaspora, the business community? What role will the various segments of our society play in the vision of the United Workers' Party going forward under your leadership?
I've been very clear to the people of Dominica that my leadership will be based on honesty, integrity, and accountability, as well as transparency. It is very important that I offer to the people of Dominica a leadership style that is engaged or engaged with all sectors of society. My vision for Dominica is one that is united, where no one is left behind. No one is considered as less than honorable, or no one is considered as less than having a seat at the table. So, in terms of the vision that I share, is a vision that will promote the interests of the young people of Dominica, and that will provide opportunities for the young people. So, using my skills as an economist, using my skills as someone who have spent many, many years developing other countries, working in the interests of other countries, I can now bring those skills to bear in Dominica. So, importantly, there will be a focus on economic development, a focus on job creation, a focus on creating opportunities for our young people. But in addition to the young people, we want to focus on our elderlies and on older persons who have contributed to Dominica, who have spent all their lives in Dominica, to ensure that there is a system that will take care of those who are less fortunate or those who may not have the means. In addition, to ensure that you have a public service that is efficient, where people are empowered to work hard, a public service where people give their all to the state. It also involves taking care of those who are less fortunate amongst us. For example, in Dominica, we have a situation of a very high crime, a very high crime rate, a very high murder rate, for example, amongst our young men in particular. That is very concerning to me as a leader in this country. And the question is, how do we deal with this? How do we provide opportunities for young people? Our legal system, how do we take care so that people don't fall through the cracks? So all of these are issues, because what you have is a very disparate and a very different groupings of persons, the young, the elderly, the children. I'm very much concerned, for example, about the level of domestic violence and sexual violence against our young women, the number of young persons that are abused. All of those issues that I would love to tackle as a leader of the party, and show a different direction on this, so that we care. One of the major things about, and in terms of the vision for Dominica, is to have a government that cares about the welfare of its people, that takes care of its people, those who find themselves in trouble, those who find themselves contrary to the laws of the land, but also just create this environment where people will want to belong to this country, rather than having people running away constantly, trying to get as far away from Dominica as possible. And we used to do something, before, as young kids, we would throw a stone behind our back, if you want to finish with that particular situation. Too many people are throwing stones behind their back and running away from Dominica. We want to reverse that. We want to promote a country where people would be proud to live. And our former leader, Honorable Lennox Linton, had a very important saying that Dominica should be the best place to live, to work, and to enjoy life. And that is something that we want to promote. That is something that our party continues to promote. And we believe that we have the skill set. We believe that we have the necessary support within the party to get it done. But to get all of this done, of course, we have to be elected in office. So a vision, my own vision, is to ensure that, and that's the promise that I gave when I was talking to our delegates, the promise that I gave to them is that I will work night and day to ensure that the United Workers' Party, when there is electoral reform and we have new elections, that our party comes out on top.
Yes, yes, and thank you for that, Dr. Fontaine. And it's great to hear you talk about situations in Dominica, such as the high murder rate, abuse of women, sexual abuse, because unfortunately we hear a lot of campaigning, but those are not issues that we're hearing as a concern of the Labour Party. I keep listening for it because those are my concerns, but I don't hear anything about those particular issues, and they're critical to the foundation of our society.
Yeah, if you listen to the ongoing campaign, you would swear that there are no issues in Dominica.
Right?
Because as you rightly said, none of these issues are spoken about. None of these issues are talked about. I mean, persons have been murdered. We've had more, probably 15, 16 murders so far for the year in Dominica. And it's never mentioned by the politicians, never mentioned by the government. The level of crime that we have, no mention is made of it. And you wonder what is going on. It's almost like if you don't talk about it, it does not exist. But the fact of the matter is that these situations are there. A significant number of our young men in particular are going through hells in this country. And a lot of it has to do or is tied in to the fact that you have very little opportunities for young people. There's very little opportunities for work. And where that does exist, as in is the case of the National Employment Program, the NEP program, persons are paid substandard wages. I mean, imagine individuals are being paid $500 a month in Dominica for a month's work. And you figure $500 can probably get you, I remember talking to a young gentleman some time ago that was part of the NEP, and I wanted to get a feel for him as to what the 500 does. I know what it does, and I know what you can get. I'm well aware of the cost of living in Dominica. But he was telling me that, he has to divide his month. So, for example, in month one, he will buy a quarter bag of sugar, a quarter bag of flour, and then probably a little bit of something else, probably some milk or something. That takes care of the $500. The next month, he will buy, other things. So probably at the end of 4 or 5 months, he has everything that he requires. But he cannot do everything in 1 month because $500 can only take you so far. But that is the reality that we have in Dominica, that a significant portion, a significant number of persons who've been employed by this government are employed under the NEP program. And that is simply not good enough. We have the situation of the public servants. Our public servants are very hardworking, dedicated public servants who have to get up every day, 5 days a week, sometimes 6, 7 days a week, if you count the police officers and our nurses. And they are not receiving much by way of remuneration. I worked as a high school teacher in Dominica over 20 years ago. And the salary I was getting then, a high school teacher is getting that same salary all those years later. And when you think about it, the value of this $1,500 is probably now worth about $600 in real terms, given the level of inflation. So these are the real situations we have in this country. And it is made worse when you consider that this is a government that has had at its disposal millions and millions of dollars. But this money has not been invested in the public service. It has not been invested in a very good and powerful welfare system. It has not been invested in protecting our young ladies against predators. It has not been done. These monies instead have been packed overseas, has been given to individuals to do as they wish, and that simply is not good enough. And that is the reason why I offered myself to serve in this capacity, to rally persons to understand their own situation, because sometimes people are just going about their business, probably they're too concerned about making ends meet to think about those things. So it is my duty now as a leader of the party to bring those issues to the attention of the public and say, hey, not only are we bringing those issues to you, but we believe as a party we can do better at addressing those issues. And it's in the process of addressing those issues that we can bring a better standard of living to Dominica, and we can make this place truly the place to live, work, and to enjoy life.
Yeah, and Dr. Fontaine, thank you for that. And you're absolutely correct, because when, for example, you see on social media, a turkey in Dominica is costing $235, it begs the question of what can you really do with 500 EC dollars a month. And I think we also need to distinguish, because I've just been making a lot of observations along the way. I also think it's important to distinguish between a government who says they want to, quote unquote, take care of you, as opposed to a government who wants to provide an enabling environment so you can take care of yourself. Because I
Absolutely.
don't think what Dominicans are realizing is when the government says, I will take care of you, it means I will take care of you as long as you keep voting me back in and you keep being dependent on me, as opposed to a government that says, I will provide an enabling environment for you. It's the difference in styles of parenting, where parents spoil the children by giving them everything that they need, and then they become adults and they don't know how to take care of themselves, as opposed to parents who train their children to be independent so that they can grow up and grow wings and fly away. So, how does the United Workers' Party plan on creating that enabling environment so that folks can take care of themselves?
And that's where, Simon, we set ourselves apart as the United Workers' Party from this government. And the evidence is there. In the 5 years we were in office between 1995 and 2000, we showed a different way. We showed how a government should be run. And now we've had many years to strengthen our approaches, to rethink our approaches, and areas where we are weak to strengthen those. So now we can offer a more fundamental program to the Dominican public. We can offer something that they can actually believe in. And, it's unfortunate we are not part of this election, but we are hoping that as soon as we have those reforms and we have new elections, that we can begin to demonstrate to the Dominican public. But in the meantime, what we can do and what we are doing is going out there and reminding the Dominican public how things can be different. I mean, I can give you countless examples. Take the example of just housing. I don't believe it is a good policy to simply give people houses to live in. I believe that if you're going to provide those houses, that persons have to have the sense of responsibility. And the way you provide a sense of responsibility is to say, yeah, we'll provide you those housing. However, you'll have to pay something, even if it's just a token amount a month, because we understand that things are hard. But you have to have this person's feel a sense of indebtedness, or feel that they have something to work to. So you're not just giving it to them and dangling it before them, but they have a path to owning that property, which to me makes a fundamental difference.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
it really does begin with job creation, Dr. Fontaine, because if people had jobs, then they would be able to pay a mortgage. And, I'm a proud a person who grew up in the Baptist housing scheme. And we still own to this day a Patrick John house, right?
right,
And
right.
it's because we were able to have employment. My father was employed. My mother, did what she could do to support us. And so we were able to own the home and have a title to the home. So we see lots of comments are coming in on the Facebook Live. We want to thank the incredible audience that is joining us today. We will take your questions in a little while. But Alvin Thomas also sent us some questions for you, Dr. Fontaine. And I'm happy that you touched on the importance of trust and transparency in the beginning part of your explanations, because I think what we're seeing now is a lack of trust. Because when you have a government, a prime minister who says to you, in his own words, that there will not be another elections until the electoral reform process has gone through, and then the same day that the first report comes out, he announces a snap election. I mean, do I really need to ask the question about trust? And I think we can think of countless examples of that. So here's the question that Alvin submitted to you. He says, Dr. Fontaine, trust is a huge issue today in politics, business, and institutions, including the churches. Are you concerned about that? And how do you intend to address this trust issue, starting in your party and the rest of the country?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Let me thank Alvin for this. In fact, this has a legal term. It's called, I believe, reasonable expectation. In that when public officials or when public persons, when they make statements to the public, there is a reasonable expectation that they will carry through on the promises. So when the prime minister comes out on the night that he is elected and says, my number one priority is electoral reform. And I promise you, the people of Dominica, that I will have electoral reform for you. and within my first 100 days, I will enlist the services of a renowned jurist to do it. And he goes out, the jurist does his work, provides his report, and on the day that he provides his report, you turn around, slides him, and goes and announces elections with the same problem that you yourself identified. So there is a complete breakdown of trust. There is a complete lack of trust. How can we trust you as citizens of Dominica when you make such a bold-faced promise and you turn around and completely, cast aside the entire Dominican population? So yeah, I agree that there is a situation of trust in this country. People simply don't trust anything that the Prime Minister says. But however, I think it's a larger societal problem because even within the churches, even within certain communities, people lose trust in their leaders because they see that they say one thing and they behave differently. And even leaders who support, even against their own better judgment, even within the church, you wonder, well, why would a church leader support a political leader who is so clearly out of sync? Who is making all of those promises, who is giving our resources to foreigners? How can a church leader support it? So there's that complete breakdown, as it were, within our society. The way that I would address this is, and that's the reason why at the very beginning I have given that solemn promise to the Dominican public that my leadership within the party to begin with, and ultimately as leader of the country, because I believe that we as a party are going to get to that place, is that it will be based on honesty and accountability. And the idea of accountability, when you are accountable to the people of Dominica, when you make a promise to them, you keep that promise. I can understand if you make a promise and then something happens and it is beyond your control. But that's a situation where a promise was made, you began to act on it, and when it became critical for you to see it through, you just abandon it. So there is where you have the breakdown of trust. So, that is something that I want to show the Dominican public, that my own style in terms of leadership, in terms of leading the country, will be completely different. I will not make promises that I'm not able to keep, but when I do make a promise, I will keep those promises.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Margaret Wallace, who is joining us live, says it best, a breakdown of our society moral fabric. And Tewo also agrees that with trust comes accountability. There has been no trust with the incumbent party. So, guys, keep the Facebook live comments coming in. I will try to get to as many of them as possible. But Thompson, Dr. Fontaine, something else that comes to mind is that it just seems like the UWP has been fighting an uphill battle for about 20 years right now. And, I'm sure a lot of us are curious in terms of what will be the strategy for getting into office this time around, because I have to tell you, I'm a very observant person. And what I am seeing with regards to the Labour Party is on several fronts, right? So they've cornered the entertainers, right? They've cornered the media, and most recently, what I'm noticing is that they're taking over social media, not to forget the cool outs that they're handing out. That is all part of their strategy. Religion, cool outs, all the entertainers they can pay for, monitoring the radio. As you know, they monitor Q95 very closely, so they know exactly what is going on the quote unquote other side. But the most recent observation I have found is that they're doing social media blasts, so that when one program goes live, it is live on all the prime ministers, ministers' pages, so that they're controlling the narrative that is put out there. So, given all this information, what will be your strategy for getting the United Workers' Party into office?
When you peel back all of this, what you will understand is that in 2014, the government, this current government won by 610 votes, right? 610 votes. In 2019, it's but about 12, 1,300 votes. And the way you calculate this is that if you look in the constituencies that they won, if you were to add 8 constituencies that we could have won and the margin of victory, you will see that it's not a great margin. So with all of that, with this overwhelming level of resources, with the ability to bring persons from overseas in large numbers, in constituencies that they have identified that they can win that way. They've won through trickery, they've won through cheating, through treating, all of those different means. But at the end of the day, the margins of victory are not all that great. So what that tells me, as someone who spent a lot of time doing strategic thinking, is that this government is beatable. And the way you beat this government is to ensure that there is a level playing field. And that's why the number one priority for me as this leader of the United Workers' Party, number one priority is to get electoral reform. And that's why I said last night to the party faithful that I will neither sleep nor rest until there is electoral reform. So that's one. You begin with a level playing field. With a level playing field, we will be able to overcome the advantage that this party has. And in terms of the other things that you talked about, in terms of promotion on social media, we have to use all of those various tools. Importantly, we have to reinforce our base. We have to attract new persons into our party, and that's what we'll be doing, attracting new persons. And the way we're going to do that is with a very sober and realistic program, something that is believable, a program that we can back up with facts, we can back up because we've done it elsewhere, or we've seen it happen before and we know how to do it. Basic policy measures that we'll put in place that can create wealth, that can create employment for young people in particular. We are going to be putting together a program that we can take to the Dominican public and say, that is what we are offering you. That is what we believe we can accomplish in that time. And we believe that with dealing with the public,
Now,
honestly,
would you be
we'll be
able to
able to do
share
it.
some of those projects that you have in mind?
We have no, that is within our planning.
Okay.
We cannot do it now, and because we are not in an election mode, so this is better left for when we are closer to an election. We can reveal this, because my fear is that we start saying what we're going to do,
Yep.
and then copycats are
Yep.
everywhere, and we certainly don't want to risk that. But I can assure the Dominican public that we are constantly thinking through how we can build wealth, how we can grow the economy, how we can provide greater opportunities. And we're not these are not theories. For example, about a year ago, I started an investment club where I have about 12 or so young Dominican professionals who are investing in the stock market, right? And that's one way of growing wealth. They contribute and we invest these monies in the stock market, and we're doing exceptionally well. There are different ways, different things that we can do and have people buy into it and allow, as I said, create wealth, and just really turn this metric around. When I look at young people in Dominica and they work so hard, I see those nurses who work really really hard to take care of the sick, and our teachers who work under all sorts of conditions. Sometimes they have to put their hands in their own pocket to probably buy a book for a child, or to contribute something. They work so hard, and yet at the end of the day, they can barely make it. They can, even where they are married and they have two salaries, it is so difficult for public servants to really live a decent life. But I remember a time when public servants used to take holidays. They used to have those big excursions to New York and to Paris and to London, because people had money. Now all of that has vanished. People can barely take vacations, not even staycations as they call it. Not even within the country can go to a hotel, probably take a 2 nights at some hotel here in Dominic. They cannot even do that. And that's the kind of thing that I believe the United Workers' Party can reverse, and it can change. And that's the vision that we're selling to the Dominican public. and we'll have a lot more to say in terms of actual projects, but that will be for another day. But I can just assure you,
Yes.
Simon, that we are thinking through these things. We are working on them, and at the correct time, we'll be able to reveal those to the public.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Dr. Fontaine, because I know, for example, Monel Alexis is a wealth of information with regards to growing wealth, with regards to embracing technology to build wealth. So I know that you're surrounded, and she's just one person that pops into mind because she's very present on social media. So I already know that you have the team that I keep talking about, creating that enabling environment rather than quote unquote taking care of people, and then if they fall out of favor with you, then hey, I'm
Yeah.
not going to take care of you anymore, and then you have no skill
Yeah,
sets to
nothing.
take care of
Yeah.
yourself. So
Yeah,
I think that
exactly.
you're certainly surrounded by the right team. So far, in terms of the challenges, we've talked about the economy of Dominica, we've talked about growing membership. Some of the things that come to mind, some of the criticisms that have been levied against UWPs, for example, they spend too much time on the radio, we don't see them on the ground, and also the idea of no money. Because I think in the mindset of Dominicans, there is this illusion that the money of the country belongs to the Labour Party. And if the UWP were to come into power, they would have no money to run the country. So, kind of just speak to us on those two particular criticisms that we often hear about the United Workers' Party. That all we do is we hear them on the radio talking, talking, talking. We don't really see them on the ground, and the issue about money. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, actually, we have listened, no, I have listened to this particular criticism of the United Workers' Party, and I can tell you that we are working really, really hard to addressing this. In fact, we'll be having a press conference tomorrow where we'll be announcing a plan to reach out to our communities. I refer to it as the All Doors Initiative, where the plan is the United Workers' Party representatives, those who plan to offer themselves for service and to run as candidates and so on, will be going to every single community. We'll spend the time, we'll talk, we'll discuss, we'll find out from the public what their problems are, what their issues are. We want to listen to them. It will be more like a listening tour initially, where we spend the time. We talk to the fishermen, we talk to the farmers, we talk to the nurses, we talk to the doctors, we talk to everybody. We visit the schools, we speak to the school children. That will be a critical part of the next few months. That is the guarantee that I've given to the party. That is an effort that I'm definitely going to spearhead. And that is in response to a very real criticism that we do not spend enough time on the ground. We are going to ensure that we have a permanent presence on the ground. We'll strengthen our community groups, what we call the community associations or constituency associations. We will strengthen those because these are the institutions that will ultimately be attracting the new members that we want to join the party, the persons that we want to attract to the party. We'll equip those associations with the vision and the plans of the party so that they can share those. So that will be an ongoing effort from the get-go, okay, to really attract new interests into the party, spend the time on the ground. So we've listened, we've heard this criticism, we respect it. It does not mean that we will disappear from the radio. That will still be part, but more importantly, we'll spend the time on the ground. Now, on the issue of resources, that's one of the issues that I'm again taking head on. Last night at my acceptance speech to our delegates, I lamented the fact that not enough members of the party, dedicated members, commit to the membership fees. Every single political party, even in the United States, we say the Democrats, it is the members more so than business places that contribute. The regular, for us, it's a simple matter of $5 a month. So I made a direct appeal to our members last night to pay their membership fees. If every single, we have over 17,000 persons who voted for us. If every single member makes that commitment of $5 a month, or who can afford more does that, we can do a lot more. In addition to that, the onus is on me as a leader of the party to get additional resources, because I understand we cannot do the kinds of projects and different things that we are looking to do. We cannot do it with just membership dues. So that's where my ability to reach out to the diaspora, I believe that's a very important component of this. So if you're listening to us in the diaspora, we'll be coming to you. Um, you know, when I was in the United States, I received on almost during the time of Barack Obama's reign, almost on a daily basis, I would receive an email asking for a contribution to Barack Obama's campaign and to his success. And people took it up and gave that support. And we're looking for a similar style thing where will be going to the thousands and thousands of Dominicans who want to see better, who believe in the vision of the United Workers' Party. We believe that they will be able to help us in that regard, and of course, ultimately, different business places and so on. But I want us to start with the members and if the supporters in the diaspora contributing whatever they can within their means towards the party.
Yeah, yeah, and you're absolutely correct, Dr. Fontaine, because I do two radio programs, one with a radio station you started, tdnradio.net, Untapped Potential, as well as Roots Connections on Q95 Radio. And the ability to tap into our diaspora has been my mission, because there are so many of us who have left Dominica, and now, thanks to the power of technology, to be able to connect with our knowledge base, we've been able to make donations, financial contributions. I've had maybe at least 200 guests who have come on the programs, and that is not including the 19,000 visitors we have on Push Past 10, the massive audience we have on Q95. So we certainly have the ability to reach folks. The question is, are they willing to make the commitment to donate the resources needed for the work? And I think most of us are interested in being a part of the movement, because I think we see the picture a little bit more clearer, because I always think that true independence comes from financial independence. So when you're financially independent, you are able to see things a little bit differently than when you're dependent on the government for your every need. But the other criticism, Dr. Fontaine, that I recently heard, and after this question, we're going to have you rest your voice and go over and take the comments on Facebook. You may want to grab a pen and paper for any of the questions you want to respond to on Facebook. But the most recent criticism that I heard, and I vehemently oppose that criticism, having known you for 30 years now, is that Thomson Fontaine is too weak. He's not aggressive. He's not, I guess they want you to go down into the gutter and give somebody some mepui, Dr. Fontaine. So, what do you say to that? And, I just have to say that in my personal opinion, you're a very tenacious person. You're somebody who, when you make a commitment, you stick to it. And I'm speaking about a 30-year relationship that we've had, a 30-year friendship. So I think I'm on good standing to make this observation. So what do you say to those who say that Thomson, he's too mild-mannered, he's too, calm, he needs to have more energy in this fight?
Yeah, I think it boils down to our style of politics in Dominica. I call it the rara politics,
Yes.
where everybody's shouting at the top of their lungs and pushing their in their faces and so on and so on. I come from a slightly different approach. I believe, and I believe in my style of politics, that you show your strength by standing up to the bully. So, for example, it does not often take a bully to bring down a bully. Somebody, a quiet person can take down a bully just by the way they react to it. And it's not a question of me being soft or mild or so on. And that is far from the truth, because I would not have accomplished what I have accomplished in life if I was that way. I'm not if I have to get into your face, I will do it. But I don't see that as my number one strength. Anybody can do that rara politics, right?
Right.
Just be shouting and want to fight and take out your shirt and draw, I approach it differently. Mine is one over ideas. I want my ideas to contend. I want to be able to think through problems and settle it amicably. You know, I, 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 I don't believe I should be out there cursing the prime minister, cursing the president, and so on, just because I want to prove a point. No, what does that get you? So if people are looking for that type of fam deba type approach, you're not going to get that from me, because that's not my style. Mine is different. I will direct criticism when it is needed. I will criticize when I have to. I will stand up when I have to stand up. As the other day, I called the prime minister coward to his face. Say, he's a coward for the way he behaved. I will do those things, when I believe it is necessary, but that will not be a constant thing. To me, my role is to contend for the hearts and minds of Dominicans, and that's what I will do. So I will take the time. I will be on the block. I will sit with any and everybody, with the so-called paros. I don't call them paros because they're human beings, but if those who are less advantaged than us, I will sit with them. I will reason with them. I will sit down in your kitchen. I will sit down in your yard. I will come to the garden and talk to you. These are the things that I will do, and I will do aggressively. So it's more about an aggressive intent and purpose to reach people, to talk to people, to convert them, as against just standing out there and shouting insults and so on. You're not going to get that from me.
Yes, well, very well said. And we have so much more to talk about, including the electoral reform that has not yet taken place. But Dr. Fontaine, I want to give you a minute to catch your breath, rest your voice for just a minute, maybe grab a pen and paper if you need to. I'm going to read some of the comments. You can listen attentively, and then you will decide which ones you may want to respond to. So, guys, lots of comments. I'm going to do my best to take as many of them as possible because, again, you are part of the conversation, you are part of the decision, and you are part of moving Dominica forward. So, Avril, congratulations. Sandra, good evening. Stan, congratulations to Dr. Fontaine. Darius Polidor, hi Thompson, Jennifer Christmas. Houston is sending love and prayers to Dr. Fontaine. Dr. Wallace says, looking forward to this conversation. Avril, diplomat with years of experience to provide the leadership necessary to unify the party, especially with the younger minds wanting to play a more active part in the direction of the party. Ernest Later, always great to see you. Murray Jules, if your party becomes government of Dominica and you have majority in parliament, will you try to fix that snap election to fix the date every 5 years? I think that's a good one, Dr. Fontaine. So take a note of this one. Will you try to fix that snap election to a fixed date every 5 years? Adelaide Joseph Islock, thank you for being here. Clyde Gregoire, always great to see you. Jamin Hector, good evening. Adelaide, Dr. Fountain, I pray for God's divine wisdom, direction, and protection on you and your team. My mom, Medina Stenhouse, good night to Dia Rose and Dr. Fontaine. Hey, mom, great to see you. Diane Roberts, what? $500 for the whole month of work? Yes, Diane, and that is 500 easy. Al Charles, good evening. Alvin Thomas, great to see you. Congrats, Dr. Fontaine. Bree Stenhouse, my sister has a question. Dr. Fontaine, I think most people are anxious to hear what the plan is for the election next week. Vote for independence or not? There seems to be some mixed messages going around in some of the constituencies from what I've heard. This is all great, but the election is upon us. So it would be great to hear tonight, once and for all, what the voters should do. So I'm going to put a pause right here, Dr. Fontaine, because I think we have quite a few great comments and questions coming in. So I want to give you an opportunity to respond before we move forward.
Yeah, these are excellent questions, but let me I'll deal with the last one first on what voters should do. We have been very clear as a party, it's very clear that we will not participate in the election, and we're therefore not encouraging persons to participate. That's very clear. And it's very simple. In addition to us not participating, even with a government that is running itself, that is almost guaranteed of 21 seats, they're still importing voters. Persons in Antigua and Guadeloupe and so on have been offered tickets to come to vote in Dominica. So because the government want to increase the numbers of persons. So we are saying do not take part in the elections. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that as an independent candidate you're going to win, because they're still up to the same dirty means that they've used all of those years. Nothing has changed. And so our approach is it will not make a difference. There's no way 11 independent candidates are not going to win. So you're not going to turn over the government with 11 seats. It's not going to happen. So we are saying abstain from voting. In fact, we would appeal to the independent voters to even withdraw at this stage and not provide any legitimacy for this election. Because the message we are sending to the international community and our regional governments is that this is a sham election, it is illegitimate, and we should not be a part of it. So let that be very clear. The second thing, with regard to the snap elections and the calling of the NA, I think the British did us wrong by this. I think that is one thing that, given the majority in Parliament, I would move to change. I believe that what we need is a fixed date for elections. We are simply not a mature enough democracy, and then it would have to be some exceptional circumstance. For example, if there is a vote of no confidence in the government or something, you have some exceptional circumstances where the date could probably be different. So, for example, if you have a government in place and then there is a vote of no confidence in that government, then in that case you would have to go back to the polls. But other than that, for some very extreme circumstance, having a fixed date I think is good, and that is something I would definitely support and definitely push for.
Yeah, thank you for that. And let's just stay on electoral reform for just a minute. Alvin asked, electoral reform has been a huge issue over the last 3 election cycle. How confident are you that we are much closer to implementing that reform, given Prime Minister's scary call of a snap election on December 6th? So do you think that we're any closer? And then the other question that comes to mind as well is, what happens if we continue to see no movement on this electoral reform and the Prime Minister just keeps calling snap elections? What is the recourse?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I think we can reasonably say that electoral reform will happen. It will not happen for this election because its elections are next week. But as I said, that's the number one priority of the party, and we will do everything within the laws of Dominica, including, and I'll repeat, I've been misquoted, and I want to use this opportunity there to make the point that I'm not advocating for violence. What I said last night was civil disobedience, not civil unrest. People have said I said civil unrest. I said civil disobedience, which is well within our constitutional rights to do. We will also pursue the courts. Every single effort will be made, and including where, in fact, one of the first things I did once I got back into this process here was to canvass lawyers, and I continue to do that. I'm talking to lawyers locally, overseas, trying to get the best approach we can use legally to tackle this thing. So we are doing it on the legal front. We'll be doing it with civil disobedience and every other means that is available to us legally and under the Constitution. We will pursue it, because I believe that this country should not be operating normally as if everything is okay in the absence of electoral reform. So we need to continue to pursue this. Unfortunately for us, we don't have a situation as we did in the 1970s, where we could call the public unions out on strike. Persons are afraid to go on strike. Although I'm part of the Electoral Reform Coalition, the Public Service Union is part of that coalition. But to call a strike, because persons go on strike, and if they do that, their monies are deducted from the days that they spend out on strike. So already persons who are hard pressed are saying, boy, I don't think so. I'm not going to lose a 3 or 4 days wage by going on strike. So you have that. Not only that, persons are discriminated against if they go on strike. Not only are they discriminated against, but their families are discriminated against. I mean, that's the level at which we are in Dominica. So I sympathize with persons who feel that they cannot put their livelihoods on the line. And also, if you're a public servant and you're going to strike against the government, they fire you, where are you going to go? There is no private sector that is going to absorb you. So these are the real issues that we are faced with. So very often I hear persons criticizing and say, well, they should be going on strike. We remember, there are real issues that the situation is extremely and very different from what it was 30, 40 years ago when the unions protected you. Okay, everybody spoke together, everybody acted together, even where they supported the government. And if there was an issue of workers' right, they would stand for it. But I can guarantee you in this current situation, persons who support the government will most likely not go on strike. So it means that only a fraction or portion of the workforce will be involved in the strike. So right away, that defeats the purpose. So we're not going to find this kind of strike action and so on. So we have to look at other means. And the other means are pursuing it through the legal route and doing the protests and the demonstrations and asking for the government to do what is right by the people. And ultimately, we'll have success. We're not going to have a constant cycle of no elections, of no reforms. It's not going to happen.
Well, I
We
think that
will.
is
This is the last election where we're going to have this no election, no reform.
Well, I think that is very reassuring for many of us Dominicans because that is obviously is a great concern of us. And I will come back to the Facebook Live comments, but I'm very happy that you mentioned fair, Dr. Fontaine, because I think the greatest challenge that a new political party coming into Dominica doesn't matter. Of course, we would love for it to be the UWP, but any party coming into power in Dominica, I think one of their greatest challenge is going to be the psyche of Dominica. How do you change the mindset of a people that in the last 20 years have learned to be learned helplessness, completely dependence on the government, not particularly interested in pursuing a different approach. And, I always go back to that scenario that you provided when you called into Roots Connections last week of that young man who simply said, why do I have to do all that? The government can provide for me and my family. So I think it begs the question, how do you reverse the mindset of a people who have come to be so dependent on the government for everything? And that will be one of the major challenges that the UWP or any political party would face in Dominica.
You know, a drug addict, someone who is dependent upon drugs, I'm told that when they want to heal themselves, they can do it two ways. They can go what they call cold turkey, where they no longer have access to those drugs, and so they are forced to get out of it, or they can go for a process of treatment and so on and get out of it gradually. I think for us, and the analogy that I'm drawing there is that this dependent thing will most likely end when the money runs out. So, passport, for example, at some point we expect the passport sales to come to a halt because the European Union is doing everything now within its powers. They've already forced Malta, Bulgaria, and Greece to stop. I believe now it's only one other country that is doing the passport program within the EU. And now they're targeting those countries like Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia that are involved. So when that source of funds dries up, because there are no other source of funds, there are no other source of funds in Dominica, our taxes are a fraction of the monies coming from the sale of passports. Our taxes are not enough to pay public servants. It's not enough to provide school services, hospital services. It's not enough. Okay, I'll give you an example. Our spending right now is about $1 billion a year. We make about less than 300 million in taxes. So it means that the other $700 million have to come from the sale of passports or from loans, right? So when that money dries up, as it will, it means the government no longer has that money to build apartments and dangle a key in front of your face and say, you can't have it. It's not yours. If you misbehave, if you don't vote me, we'll take it away from you. Because they will not have the monies in the first place to build those new apartments and so. So you're going to have that situation. The other thing is where people are deprogrammed. It's like going through rehab, and you talk to them, you encourage them, you kind of reprogram their mind. And that's what our All Doors initiative will do, because it will focus on sitting, taking the time, deliberately to explain to people that there is in fact a different way. Okay, that what you're used to, that's not how governments operate across the globe. Things are different. People are supposed to work and help to build a country. It's in the process of hard work and industry that you build a country and you reap the rewards from that hard work. No country has been built on a handout. And I'll give you a very good example. The US economy, for example, many years there was this welfare industry, until I believe it was Bill Clinton who had a deliberate program to get people off of welfare, get them working. And that's when the American economy really began to go places. Because before, people were just relying on government handouts. I'm getting $700 a month to pay my rent, and so I don't have to work. But they said, no, we're going to take this away from you. You now have to get out of welfare and go to work. And people did. And that is when the American economy really began to take off. And it can now provide all these opportunities for everybody everywhere, including Dominicans, to go and find work. The same thing will have to happen here. Once you remove this incentive, people will be forced to work. You create the jobs for them, and they will find work to do. And that is how we're going to break this cycle. But I believe it can be broken. It will not be easy. I don't fool myself into thinking that it will be an easy task, but I believe that it is doable.
Yeah, and Dr. Fontaine, they say a picture speaks 1,000 words, but I think showing real life example probably speaks 1,000,000 words. So if, for example, people are shown examples of people who are achieving limitless wealth, because keep in mind the resources of the government are limited. So you may be getting $300 a month, you may be getting $150 a month. But if you put forth somebody like Monel, who has limited abilities in terms of acquiring wealth independently, and you show folks why rely on $300, where if
Yeah,
you do it yourself, look at how much more you can
absolutely.
make. Look at the bank accounts. Show folks examples of folks working online and the amount of money. I work online. I would be happy to share my salary if you would like me to with an audience, and show them how much more you can make if you
Absolutely. And
choose
I
to
think,
work
yeah,
and you choose to not depend on the government.
yeah, no, and that is where it is. So that's why I said it's about education.
Yes.
So when we meet the young people, I would like to say to them, hey, there is a better way. There is a knowledge industry
Yes.
that you can tap into, and you can remain in Dominica, so you can enjoy the glow show, enjoy the beaches, enjoy the island life,
And the money
the
converts
wonderful
real
life,
nice.
and you can make money that way. So it's
Yes.
about letting people know what exists, because the truth of the matter is they simply don't know. The young people in particular, they believe that what they have, and this young man that I spoke about, he honestly believed that that was the only way that he had out, because that was what he was taught as a child. Mommy's talking that, hey, I don't have books for you today, I'm going to go to the red clinic and I'm going to get it, and she comes back with the books from her prime minister. You see, so that's all the child knows. All right, so now you have to now tell them, okay, there is a different way. If you work hard, if you're diligent in school, you can tap into this. And even in terms of reaching out, that's one of the things that I believe that our diaspora, and I will be calling, in addition to the resources from the diaspora, I believe that a number of persons in the diaspora can create opportunities for persons in Dominica. All right, those who have the knowledge, those who have the information, they can connect to our people here in Dominica and let them begin to tap into this. And so these are some of the exciting things that I believe that we can do, and really get people begin to change the dynamic, begin to change this narrative of dependency that we have in Dominica. And it breaks my heart to no end that I see these people in those apartments, and those who have to cut their water because they cannot afford $25 a month to pay for the water. And that is the reality. That is the reality we have. If you go to a number of those apartments in Dominica tonight, there are persons who do not have water. It has been cut off because they can't afford the $25 or $30 the Wasco is charging them a month for the water, but that is the reality of Dominica. And you want to say that you can change this, you can make it different. What this government is offering you, the prime minister is just this egoistic, selfish individual who's built one mansion, built a second, building a third, takes $64,000 from taxpayers for his own rent. Unbelievable. So you want to move away from this. You want to say that there's a better path, there's a better approach, and hopefully the Dominican public will buy into that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's work to be done, but I think you and the right team are prepared to do it. So let's take more of the comments because we want to make sure we engage our audience. Augustina George, always locked in from Canada. Great to see you, Augustina. Thank you for being here. She says congratulations. And write down any questions you would like to respond to Dr. Fontaine. Dave Bertrand, Dr. Fontaine, can you tell us about the outcome of the meeting which was supposed to be held with Sir Dennis Byron today? Glenda Lugay is locked in from California. Great to see you, Glenda. Thank you for being here as always. Jennifer Milton, congratulations, Dr. Fontaine. Julie Polido, nice to see you. Congratulations, Dr. Fontaine. I know you will do well. We need our country back. It was stolen from us more than 20 years ago, and we need it back. Mad Dominic is crying. Omar Monell, great to see you. Dr. Triffy, terrible policy on the housing violates the laws of reciprocity and leaves citizens in a state of being less than and obligated without true ownership. A terrible housing policy. Cam Henderson, nice to see you. Margel Durand, evening to all. Congrats, Dr. Fontaine. Thank you, Margel. Kimberly Rice, congrats, Omar. Congrats to the good doc for his win as party leader. Let's take some folks we haven't heard from. Let's see right here. Maria Liz Challenger, good evening. Somebody we haven't heard from. Let's go. Bernard, I have issues with this administration. I tune in to hear the betterment from you. If you elected as prime minister, there are crimes in all the Caribbean islands. Dominica has the lowest crime rates in the Caribbean. Dr. Fontaine, take notes what you want to respond to. Alvin Thomas, great response. Dorian Charles, great to see you. Nettie Max, nice to see you. Alvin Thomas, that's how China behaves. Control the narrative from the press and the media. The DLP is using China playbook. I completely agree. Stain Seraphin, my former neighbor, nice to see you, Stain. The number one threat to the destabilization of Dominica and Dominica's economy is global warming and the impact of those storms on the island. The storms are getting increasingly worse. Therefore, what are your plans to combat and minimize the impact of these storms on Dominica? Great question. Adelaide Paul, great to see you. The same strategy with trucks and loud noise. Sam Hill, our manager over there at TDN Radio. Great to see you, Sam. You mentioned NEP. Should the UWP, under your leadership, get to lead Dominica's government, how do you plan to support the private sector beyond giving loans to private businesses? Let's take one more and then we will give you an opportunity to respond. Adelaide Paul, the same strategy with trucks and loudspeakers blaring all day and night long all over the country. It gives the illusion of support and strength. It's quite annoying, honestly. Omar Monel, what is your policy with regards to appointments of civil servants? So let's take a pause here, Dr. Fontaine, and you can respond. And by the way, Clarence Christian, I will not be reading your message because we are always respectful of our guests, and we will not entertain any posts that includes calling our guests any names. So thank you for your comments, but we won't be reading it today.
You
Dr.
know,
Fontaine, go ahead.
Clarence Christian is, but
No, you're not going to come and disrespect my guests. We believe in free speech on this program, but you can't come and disrespect my guests, and my
yeah.
audience already knows this.
I hope he's listening. This is a man who was the Auditor General and refused, during the 4 years I was a senator, refused to make any report of the Auditor General available as he was supposed to, yet he was drawing the salary of an Auditor General. So, enough said.
Yes, moving on.
Let me talk about some of the issues that are raised, and let me thank your guests for being so engaging. Dave Butcher wanted to know about the Byron meeting. I'm surprised he knows about it. It was supposed to be a private meeting between the leadership of the United Workers' Party and Sir Byron and the electoral commissioners. I cannot divulge what was discussed, unfortunately. What I can tell him is that that is part of the work that is being undertaken by Sir Byron. He has decided that, irrespective of what has happened with the calling of elections, he was given a task to do, and he's determined to complete that task. So that was part of his effort to inform and to find out from us if there were any issues and questions and so on. So that was what the discussion was about, and I can say that he's moving forward with his timetable to give the report to the government by the 30th of November. So by that time, we'll get the full report and see what changes and so on that he's recommending. On the question of, one person said about the crime rate, as if to say that the crime rate in Dominica is not too bad, it is worse in the other Caribbean islands. Well, that's one way to look at it, but I can also look at it and say, well, we're a really small country, and 16 murders is too much, because I remember a time when we used to barely have a murder. There were years there would be 0 murders in Dominica. So if suddenly you have 16 murders, it's the type of violent murders. I mean, with all the crime that we have in Jamaica and St. Lucia and so on, I've never heard of a crime of a young man going into a hospital and shooting to death or to death somebody that was injured. Never heard about it. So, it's the kinds of crimes that are happening in Dominica. A young man pulls up at a gas station to get gas, and somebody comes up and shoots him right there in front of everybody. These are crimes you don't necessarily see. It's the kind of violence that I'm talking about. So it's not so much the number, but it's the type and the violence, and it's around the young men. It's a whole generation of young men, and that's what I'm concerned about. These are our future, and they're the ones that have been so violated. So you must be concerned for this. Now, the question on minimizing the storms. Now, I was involved in a very important program about 2020, about 2 years ago. I did a project with ECLAC from Trinidad and Tobago, part of the United Nations, and the project was to develop if you like, a strategy, a debt strategy, where we know that the Caribbean islands have really high levels of debt. We are very heavily indebted. In Dominica, we have about, I believe our debt level is about $3 billion. So we have a really high debt in Dominica. And the idea was all of these Caribbean countries suffer from potential climate change and the impact of global warming. So in the past, you've had debt strategies where, for example, countries would give up their debt in exchange for reducing their carbon footprint. So if a country agreed that it would do things such as planting trees and so on, that would reduce its carbon footprint, it would get a reduction in its debt. So, and we also had what we call the debt for equity swaps, where a country would get some benefits in a reduction of the debt. That was used in Latin America. So, building on what transpired, the idea was, and the task that I was given, is to come up with a strategy that you could sell to the industrial countries, where in exchange for debt forgiveness, the Caribbean countries would then use those resources to strengthen their climate resilience. Okay, so the way that would work, and what I eventually proposed, is that, for example, let's use the case of Dominica. Dominica pays, let's assume, that's not the correct numbers, but just for argument's sake, Dominica pays back $10 million in debt every month. Okay? Instead of paying back those $10 million in debt to its creditors, The creditors, who are the industrialized countries or the multinational institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, and so on, instead of paying back this 10 million to them as the servicing for your debt, they would allow you to keep this $10 million. Okay? You would keep this $10 million. They would forgive that debt. Okay? Or they would make monies available from some other part of government to pay it on your behalf. But at the end of the month, you have this $10 million, which otherwise you would have paid in debt forgiveness, or you would have paid, sorry, to redeem your debt. What you would now have to do with that $10 million, you would have to spend this $10 million on some climate resilient project. So that money would have to be spent, say, for example, in building a seawall, in reclaiming coastline, in relocating persons who may be susceptible, who are living too close to the sea line. You may have to take them. You would use this money in building, using Gideon baskets, using what they call terracing, where you build, you put stones in a kind of a step-like manner on a hilltop so that it does not come down. You don't have the landslides. So that money, for example, you could then put in a village like Good Hope or Soufriere. You'll be able to show up the mountainsides or the hillsides so that you don't have landslides with heavy rains. Okay, that is the concept behind it. So that is what I would continue to pursue. That is before the UN for consideration, and that is something, if I were in the position of authority in government, I would use that authority then to really push to get that done, to really push to get something like that initiative done, because it means at the end of the day you will now have more money which you would not otherwise have in your budget to spend on those types of climate resilient activities. And I think that's one of the ways that we'll be able to deal with that particular issue. The question is, and I think the person raised the issue of the NEP in relation to the private sector, and you're absolutely correct. The way in which you deal with the NEP workers is that, and interestingly enough, I did not hear the Prime Minister, but I was told, and I'm still looking for it, but somebody who listened last night told me that the Prime Minister made the statement because I had just been elected leader. So he said he was telling the people of the Caribbean territory, you need to come and vote, especially if you're a public servant or an NEP, because if you don't vote and this thing falls in the hands of this new UWP leader, he's going to fire all you NEP workers and all the government workers. And I'm saying, but how am I going to do this? To begin with, we are not in the election, so it does not matter. So that's not going to happen next month. But also the notion that, no, you want to create better opportunities for the NEP workers. So my focus would be on how do you get these individuals absorbed into the private sector, where you get better paying jobs. And the way you can do that, instead of giving individual dollars to individuals, you can target projects. You can have a water, and there's so many projects that can be done in Dominica, so many projects, water projects, the cannabis industry projects, essential oils. You can do projects in agro processing. You can do projects in fisheries where you do small scale canning of fishing. We have so much wonderful fish. You cut them up, you can them, you can dry them, vacuum pack them. So you have all of those things that can be done. Okay, and you can use government resources to subsidize initially those businesses or to provide a startup capital. So these budding entrepreneurs will go up there. They're doing industries for export. So that's how we're going to get the money back, because these monies are going to be if you begin to do, for example, a water project, you're going to be exporting water to all of those Caribbean countries. Foreign exchange is coming in. These monies are then used to pay better wages. So those persons who are now spending the days in the heat and the rain for not much money will now get a better paying job. All right, so it's not a matter of firing anybody, it's a matter of creating better opportunities. And the way you do that is that you develop the private sector. Our private sector is vanishing, it is disappearing overnight. All the jobs are going. Bello and the tram, and over how many thousands of businesses have been lost. Little boutiques disappearing overnight. Bakeries are going. How do you support those businesses to stay in operation and to employ people. And that is where the focus has to be. All right,
Yeah,
so that is how that would be attracted. And then the last question I believe was asked by Monel, just before you come, just to finish this round, on the appointment of the public servants. One of the things that I would, and in fact we did it in 2014, we made the promise to the public servants that a United Workers Party government will rectify the appointment process. You know, it is unconscionable, and that's a big word to me, that it is, you know, it troubles the mind. Okay, it bothers me greatly to think that persons are working for 10, 15 years and they're still acting, so acting assistant teacher, or acting this, acting that over all of those years. No, you have a system. And in fact, when I had a chance to advise the Prime Minister very early on in his reign, I advised him about setting up a merit system within the government service, a system where you, every year, people are tagged, or they, you know, you regularize the appointments to begin with, and at the end of every year there's an incentive system. Okay, so those who perform really well will get rewarded. They may get rewarded with either a promotion, or they may get rewarded with additional, an incremental increase on their salaries, so that people feel that there's worth, that they're worth something, that they can put in the extra effort. Because if I put in the extra effort, there's a good chance at the end of the year I will get something additional to take home. You know, so those, you build those incentives, and but importantly, for the service, you do away with these acting things. You know, if people are not qualified, you retrain them, give them the requisite training, get them up to speed, and then appoint them. But you can't just have people hanging, you know. And the reason why and that's it, that comes back to what we talked about earlier, people not being able to even strike. Because if you're acting, you're not appointed, you cannot go on strike because you'll be the first to go. You know, so yeah, that's how you have to deal with that particular situation.
Yeah, and you know, Dr. Fontaine, for someone like me who's a professor of industrial organizational psychology, that is an area I would love to be involved with, in terms of employee motivation, leadership, and how do you get employees to be more engaged so they're more productive, because they know they will earn a better salary. But when we're being told that those of us in the diaspora are trying to run the country via remote control, I'm not very incentivized to
Yeah.
want to be a part of an administration that thinks I'm trying to run the country via remote control.
Yeah, it's a lack of understanding. It's a lack of appreciation for the tremendous interests that the diasporans have in Dominica. I mean, Dominican diasporans spend more time worrying about Dominica than
Yes,
Dominicans even living in Dominica. I can
I
tell you.
agree.
I know. I speak to them. I was in that position, you know. You spend more time thinking about Dominica. So that notion that, you know, you're doing remote control, no, is to find a way to harness those skills of the diasporans to help build their country. You know, because yeah, I know people who would love to come and in this beautiful weather and atmosphere to retire even, you know, but they will not do it because there is nothing in place for them. But if you encourage them, and as I said, one of the major areas that the United Workers Party will be looking at even before, and Mark, even before we come into power. So that will be, depending on the amount of time we have before the next election, we want to spend time to begin to create opportunities. One of the things that is really concerning to me as a leader of the largest opposition party is the welfare of our members. And what do I mean by that? Our welfare, their members, they are discriminated against. If they know that they support our party, they don't get the jobs, they don't get the promotions, they don't get the opportunities, their children don't get the opportunities to work. You know, so what can we do as a party in opposition? So that is going to concern me as well. And in terms of priorities, the welfare, I forgot to mention that at the start. But when I talked about what the role of the leader is, that to me is very important. How do we not only get resources to run a campaign, but how do we garner resources to help our members? To begin to start looking at industry, at some type of because frankly, I don't believe that we have to wait to be in government to begin to see how we can get a factory going or get some industry going that can employ members of the United Workers' Party. And that is one area that I want to commit to as well, that I'm committed to. And in terms of the discussions going forward with the diaspora and how we can raise resources and so on, that to me is very critical. How do you provide opportunities for the members, and how do you look at the welfare of your party members?
Yeah, and thank you for that. And as you can see, Dr. Fontaine, we have a wealth of information coming in from our audience. So it is so important to have our overseas brothers and sisters as part of the conversation. But I also think what we are seeing is that this government rules from a position of fear, right? So, it keeps telling I listen to the campaigns very closely because I think it is important to listen to all sides of the stories. And one of the things that you often hear is the impression that United Workers' Party, they're going to come in and they're going to destroy everything that we have worked for, all the things that you benefit from. And I think Albert says it well when he posed this question. Over several years, the DLP administration has been heavily dependent on the CBI program in terms of your party's program at stimulating the economy, thereby creating jobs for young persons as well as creating an enabling environment for business. What would your party do differently should you continue the CBI program? What would the UWP administration CBI program look like? So let's keep in mind that, potentially the CBI program could go away, but while it is still in existence, is it something that you're planning on destroying? What role would the CBI program play in your administration?
You know, I am of the belief, and it is very likely that by the time we assume office, the CBI program will be ended. Right? That's a very likely possibility. And that's why I'm not even thinking in terms of development, in terms of job creation. That's not even in my thinking. My thinking is more traditional ways of generating wealth. How do you get resources, put stuff in place that people can work and export, that they can get the return? That is where my head is, because that is self-replenishing. If you have a factory that is constantly exporting canned fish or constantly exporting some essential oils and so on, you're constantly making this money. It is self-replicating.
Yeah, it's
It
sustainable.
grows, it expands, it increases, right? That is where the focus will be. But let's assume, just for 1 second, let's assume that by some miracle the program is still in place. Then the first thing to me would be to review it. Okay, you would have to review that program. Okay, because by that time, obviously, you would have thousands and thousands of persons who own Dominican passports, and that itself is a worry. Okay, so just managing that aspect of it. So the first order of business would be to order a complete review of the program with a view to phasing it out, because quite frankly, I do not believe that that is the way a country should function. Okay, and it has been phased out in other countries. Like I gave the example of Bulgaria, of Greece, of Malta. These countries have been forced, and they were making billions and billions of dollars every year. But because they belong to the European Union, the European Union is saying, if you're going to continue to operate within the European Union, you have to give up your CBI program. And they were forced to do it. So other countries can do it. And the way they compensate for this is by doing other things. And that to me is where we have to focus on. So I would really love to phase this program out totally and just focus on building a more traditional economy that is based upon a solid foundation of manufacturing, services generation, the knowledge industry, and just generate the dollars from outside.
And I mean, the knowledge industry is billions of dollars. It's a billion-dollar
Yeah, yeah.
industry.
The
So
the
what,
green the
that is,
green the green things around green climate and so on, and
yeah,
you can,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah, so
there is no end to how much you can get from those areas. Yeah.
absolutely. So let's continue engaging our audience. Shirley James says, "Oh yes, Alvin, I went to 3 CSA vacations in New York. I was teaching high school. So talking about when the economy was good.
Yeah.
By December, my airfare was paid up. And by March, all my pocket change was in the bank. Those were the
Yeah.
days. So
Those were the
just kind of
days. Yeah.
reinforcing what you said, Dr. Fontaine.
Yeah.
Divine J, yes, UWP need to get up on the ground. Thank you for that. Let's take some comments from folks we have not yet heard from. Let's see who we have. Well, Bernard has a good one. I love my country and I would like to support a candidate with a great vision for my Dominica, but at the same time, I will not support a candidate who say things that will put down my country for his or her political agenda. Adelaide, push for shows on DBS. Kenda, Nicholas, I am ready for that. Let's see who else we have with us. Shirley James, I'm listening. I'm ready to contribute money monthly without fail, basic $20 a month. Those of us who can give more, give more. Special big donation pitch for tax time, $200 base. Joe, I want to be part of a movement with Dr. Thompson. I'm coming to be on the ground. Dee Esther, good evening, Dr. Simone, and great guest, Dr. Fontaine. Great to see you, Dee Stain. Bell Bev politics we have in Dominica. Marcel Volney, agree 100%. First time I feel hopeful in a while. Wow, that is so powerful. Margaret Wallace, say that again. You would not have accomplished what you have without the ability to fight. Dave Bertrand, the party must acknowledge or issue receipt for those who make a monthly donation to the party. Tamara Aaron, Effective Communication. Jerry Nelson over on YouTube. Blessings to you, Dr. Fontaine. You will make a great leader for the people, the UWP party. Ministers are all leaders in their own right. Sam Hill, going down to the gutter with your opponent is not a sign of strength. It is, in fact, the opposite. Couldn't have said it better. Sharon Charles, it's not rah-rah politics, it's ghetto politics, but we are not like that. We have passed. Very nice. Adelaide, question. Dr. Fontaine, will the PM ever give electoral reform? Well, first of all, it's not for the PM to
It's not for
give,
him to
right?
give. He has no choice. He has no
And
choice.
if he doesn't do,
He either gives it or we demand it and he has to do it. I mean, it's as simple as this, yeah?
yep. And if he doesn't want to within the next 5 years, what are your party's plans? Didi Esther, Dr. Simone, to your point, with the assertion that Dr. Thompson is too meek and mild, speaks to the aggression our people have been conditioned to over the years. Omar, what are your thoughts on what the PM said with regards to his pal rep in Castle Bruce? I'm not sure if you know exactly what he's talking
Yes, I
about.
know. Yeah, yeah, I'm
Okay.
aware of the comment, yeah.
T-ball, people are confusing self-control and diplomacy with weakness. There's nothing strong about yelling, being aggressive or rude. Dr. Fontaine, I have the best audience, right? Dr. Fontaine's demeanor is admirable. Veronica, Dominica needs a constitutional review as well. Makima, Seraphine, congrats. Let's see. Stephen Astapans, well said. Claude Sanfi, your election is in perfect alignment with context in our country. We need economic focus in Dominica. That fake communism is not for Dominica. Voila, is Voila? Voila! Congratulations, God bless it. Amanda, how do people contribute? Please take a note of that, Dr. Fontaine. A lot of people want to contribute, so take a note of that. Hamilton Joseph, official interview, my foot. And his first order of being a leader is to ask for civil disobedience. He's not even asking to unite. He's dividing supporters and country. I'm just reading the comments of the Fontaine.
Yeah.
Ask Thompson, based on our suspension of scary plan to become president and try sealing himself in the presidency for life. As leader of the main opposition, how will he react to stop such plans to scare it? I'm going to pause here, Dr. Fontaine, for your responses.
Yeah, wow. I'm truly infused by the several comments and suggestions and also just the various things. Let me just talk about a little bit about some of those. The question about my first call is for civil disobedience. That's not true at all. My first call was to unite the people of Dominica. because I believe that we are too divided. That was my first call that I made. The question of civil disobedience was in the context of electoral reform. Okay, I am saying that we are now in a fight for electoral reform, and because of the behavior of the prime minister, that fight for electoral reform must necessarily involve civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is just a matter of strikes and protests and so on. We are prepared to, that's not dividing the public. That is a means to an end. That is within the Constitution. We have a right to protest. We have a right to tell the government that we don't like what they're doing. So there's nothing sinister in this. That's not violence. Civil disobedience is not violence, and that is the thing. People like some of the persons are pushing. They're saying, "Oh, if you call for civil disobedience, you're calling for violence." No, it's not the same. I don't stand for violence. I don't condone violence. I will not accept our party going on the route of violence. Okay, that is very clear. And I made it very clear. I made it very clear today in Patois. I had the opportunity to speak to Kawana in part on a part of the program. I made it very clear because that was a concern that callers had. So that I just want to again address here. On the question of how people contribute, we are in the process of getting that organized. We will be able to put in place a few persons who will be able to deal with that for us, because I'm very much concerned about the accountability part and the transparency. That is very important in handling of people's resources. They have to know that these resources are well accounted for, they're well taken care of. So we are discussing with a few individuals in the diaspora to get that up and running. So we'll be in contact with persons who want to contribute in that regard. And also, I would like people to think about creative ways that they can help. So, if, for example, one of the things that I was thinking of is, as I talk about the welfare of our people, there may be some, for example, in some constituencies, you have elderly persons who are not receiving any type of assistance and who really need it, but they're not getting that assistance. Is there a way? Can we, within those means, can we take care of 4 or 5 in each constituency that would give them that kind of comfort? So, it's not that we're trying to form a parallel government, but I believe that if there are ways and means that we can get those resources to help in those regard, just in terms of the welfare of our members, and that is something that I would like to encourage. On the question of the prime minister becoming president for life, that can only happen if there is no democracy. That's the only way, because once there is a change in government, then the parliament has the opportunity to select a new president or a different president. So the question of having a single one person in a position for life is only if you become a dictatorship. And I know Dominicans may be docile, but I don't think the average Dominican would accept a totalitarian government or a dictator. It's very unlikely. I mean, I realize even today in China they're rioting. So I don't think there is any appetite for that type of leadership style. So I don't think that we'll ever get to that point. I believe that the people of Dominica will vote out this current government and will elect a government that can actually work in their best interest.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take one more batch of questions from the audience before we wind down the program this evening. But Dr. Fontaine, I have something else that I need to mention to you, because I think part of what would help as well is if I am sure there's a United Workers Party website and Facebook page and all that, if you were to provide some information on your qualification, because I know that you're someone who do not necessarily like to tout your own accomplishments, but I think it is important for people to know who you are and what you've accomplished, not only in Dominica, but on the worldwide stage, because that gives us a better understanding of your skill set in terms of moving Dominica forward. So if I don't know if that is something you had already thought about,
Okay,
but
I'll
giving
think
us a
about it. Now that you
write up
mention it, I'll think about it.
to
It's
give
not,
us a write-up
it's
on
not,
you,
yeah, yeah.
the skills of the executive, the skills of the party members, so that we have a place that we can refer to anytime we want to remind ourselves or we want to share with others who who is the leader of the United Workers' Party, who is his executive, what the members are bringing to the table, so that it helps to fortify us to know that we're putting our trust in a reputable team of Dominicans.
Yeah, no, that's a very good suggestion, because you have people like Clarence, for example, making all of those ridiculous comments, and with all my positions, I have to do a criminal background check. I do criminal background checks. I am vetted. So the idea that so yeah, so I think that's a wonderful idea, and it's something that we certainly can do. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, let's take a
Really,
last
really
round
look
of
into it.
questions before we wind down. Carol Olivache Bruni, exactly. You guys have said that along. It's not that the opposition is not ready. Why change that now? Not sure what she's asking. Let's take from somebody we haven't heard from. Glenda Luge, my question: what is his stand on a healthy debate? Nadzita Gamble, Mr. Thomson Fontaine, if your party wins the next election, will you consider putting into the Constitution that the Prime Minister should not spend more than 2 terms in office? Bree Senhouse, good point, withdrawing. Is the party going to each constituency to ensure that everyone knows they shouldn't vote next week? Don't know if everyone is getting that message on the ground. In Clear Sanders, always great to see you. Dominicans are suffering from PTS from 1979. That's the fear. Chandra Senval, we will unite in civil disobedience. Margel, Kimberly, the English language is difficult to comprehend by some of us. Bree Senhouse, how can UWP address the fear of victimization that exists even online? Absolutely. You find that persons in Dominica don't participate in discussions, etc., unless they support the current administration. And Bree, they also try to attack you when you have an opposing view, right? Viva Mamo, great to see you. Why not both? And any and all form of resistance under the Constitution. Divine, what happens if Labour gets 21 seats? Do you think there's going to be another election? Let's take from people we haven't seen. Viva Mamo, does it really matter with 17, 15, 17, 18 seats? Tanya Dixon, my friend, great to see you. I'm scared for that time to come, but it is necessary for us to become very uncomfortable. I couldn't agree more. Viva Mamo, under the present circumstances, give them more. More seats is equivalent to less legitimacy by the people, regional, international community. More seats, less political stability. Shikito Thomas, that's all true. Someone we haven't seen. Oh, let's make sure we block this person who's trying to send inappropriate images. So just give me a minute, Doc. Let me make sure we block these comments real quick. And let's see what else we have as we get ready to wind down. Let's see. I think I skipped too fast. Bree, Dougie MM, could you ask Dr. Fontaine what is his relationship with the YEF? Not sure what that is. Let's see, just a couple more before we end for the evening. Byron Winston, what's your plan for climate resilience and infrastructure hardening, renewable energy, environmental degradation and restoration, reliable air transportation to and from Dominica? Dr. Fontaine, you have to come back. We have so many questions. Viva Mama, true, but they are too dishonest, corrupt, and inept. And just a couple more. Sandra Norris, Mr. Fontaine have some great and wonderful ideas for the change of Dominica. Alvin, there used to be a merit system, but this administration has dismantled all of these rules, regulations, and procedures. So sad. Herman Peter, are you planning to come to us to meet and engage the diaspora? Mary, so true. I've been saying that all along. Let's see. Kingdom Citizen, nice to see you. Colonel Anton, nice to see you. Okay. Taiwo says, I'm not from Dominica. My husband is. When I first visited your island years ago, I was shocked to see no manufacturing factories on Dominica. Dominica has so much raw resources to manufacture. I'm looking to see that eventually manifested on the beautiful nature island. Tanya, will Doc be leaving his job and staying on the island for his new role? Henry, blessings. Emmanuel, Sebastian, good evening, Dr. Fontaine. Congratulations. My question to you is there presently a prime minister in Dominica? The reason I ask this is because once still house is dissolved and an election is called, isn't the president fully charged with the country? Nicole, congratulations from my family to yours. Your plan so far, what we have been waiting to hear someone say, and that always speaks about factories and international spot rather than an airport, and you are going to allow business owners to pay duties, whether they're a friend or party supporter who will donate monies to you. Are we going to get duty free and business ownership? Sandra Green, the concept of incentive is awesome. I have benefited tremendously from such a system in Florida as a teacher. It can help improve one's esteem and allows for individuals to give their very best, that there is something to look forward to. So excellent. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for your contributions and for being a part of the program. Kel George, how do you get the youth to play a role in UWP and what do you have in place for them? And the last one, congratulations, Dr. Fontaine, all the best. And that is from Liz Coates Flanders. So a lot to digest, Dr. Fontaine. And again, I want to thank you for joining us here on Push Past 10 and engaging our audience and taking our questions and responding to our concerns. So you can go ahead and speak with us
Wow,
on.
what a wonderful audience, man. It's just
Thank you.
amazing,
Thank
amazing.
you.
Um, yeah, the 2 year limit, the two-term limit. In fact, when I took part in the elections in 2014, I worked very hard to get that as part of our manifesto and our promise to the Dominican public. So my position on that is very clear. No prime minister should be allowed more than 2 terms. So as a leader of the party, I'll continue to push that. That will be part of our platform, the two-term limit. I think that's very important. I think 10 years is more enough time to make your mark or to leave your mark. If after 10 years you're still there struggling, you probably should not have been there in the first place, which is what I believe of this current prime minister. The fact that after 20 years he's still feeling his way should not have been there. On the question of the fear of victimization, and that is true. You hardly find people engaging in a discussion. So, for example, if I am on Q95, which is viewed as sympathetic to the United Workers' Party, you hardly ever find somebody from the opposite side calling to challenge you. It doesn't really happen often, and similarly, I was on DBS today. Most of the persons who were calling in were persons who, based on their questions, I suspected they were sympathetic to the Dominican Labour Party. So you barely have those exchanges. So what you have is that UWPites talk to UWPites, Laborites talk to Laborites. You hardly have this free flowing exchange, and that's why I believe, and that's why I'm looking forward to this All Doors initiative, because we'll be talking. I want to talk to Laborites or people who support or who are sympathetic to the Labour Party. I want to understand what their thinking is. I want to understand why it is that after all of those years of the lack of progress and no movement in the country and all of those failed promises about an international airport, why it is that you still support this government. I want to hear from them, but for people to come out publicly, it is very difficult, and that is a very sad thing. The question of the party taking all 21 seats, it is okay. To me, there is no difference between 21-0 and 18-3. With 18-3, you have the 75% that you need to change the constitution. you can do anything that you want. So everything that you can do with 18.3, everything you can do with 21.0, you can do with 18.3. So it does not change the dynamic one bit. But what it will do is that it will shine a very strong light on this particular government. It will shine a very strong light on this government's lack of electoral reform and their squashing, if you like, of democracy. And that to me is very, very important. Now, on the question of get my other questions too. Yeah, on the question of I've written some of them down here. Whether the plan is to meet and engage the diaspora, that is certainly something that we will be doing as time goes along. I mean, for now, the focus is locally in Dominica, but there will come a time when we'll begin to reach out to the diaspora. But for now, the conversation has to be with the people on the ground here in Dominica. And the question is, do I leave my job and stay in Dominica?
Yep.
I did that before. That's nothing new. I walked away from a very promising career at the IMF in 2013 to come to Dominica to be a part of this electoral process. I've done it before. The fact of the matter is I can very easily get work. I mean, it's not a problem for me. In terms of getting consultancies, even when I was whilst in South Sudan, I was constantly getting consultancies, 6 weeks, 3 months. So things that you can do in place. So that will continue. So that's not an issue. I mean, I love the work that I'm doing currently in terms of conflict mitigation and getting people to agree who fought and killed each other and so on, and to see the country build, from almost from scratch, to build institutions. When I went to South Sudan, there were no governors, there were no local government, there were no mayors, there were no county commissioners. Now all of that is in place. There was no government. Now you have a government, you have ministers. So just to see the growth and so on, it's very, very rewarding. But as I said before, and I've said on numerous occasions, for me, the task in Dominica is worth it. I was born in Dominica, so my allegiance, my first love is for Dominica, and that is where I want to put my energies. That's where I want to put my efforts. And living a job is an easy thing. It's really an easy thing to do. It's not a problem for me to do it and to really focus on this task, because that is a full-time job, really. To do all of those things that we want to do, to talk to people, to just be around them. They like you to be with them.
Yes,
even,
absolutely.
even when you stay on the radio, they don't like that. Why are you on the radio? You should be there with us in the ram shops and so on. So, yeah, so I get it, and that's where we will be. The question is, and that's a very important question, about whether there is a prime minister. Now, there is a separation. There's a separation of the powers between the parliament, the executive, and the executive. So the prime minister, he heads the executive branch, that is the ministers and so on. And then there's a parliament. Parliament is dissolved. So the opposition members, the senators, and all of that is gone for now. What is in place is the executive branch of government. So they are allowed to continue the work. So the ministers will continue until there are elections and you have this new government. So the prime minister legitimately is allowed to remain as the prime minister. Now, what could happen is that as the executive authority in Article 53 of the Constitution allows, the president can decide if there is a state of emergency or if there is some major disaster or something happens, and even in these conditions, that's what we were asking him to do. In fact, when we met with the president a few days ago, we tell him to use his executive authority and suspend this government. It has been done in other countries. It happened in Grenada in the 1980s when I think it was the governor Paul Schoons who suspended the government, and he became the executive authority in that country. okay, because the country was in crisis. So we're saying that it can be done in this case, but under the normal operation, when there are normal elections taking place in the election cycle, the prime minister continues until the election process is completed. So for example, if we had, say, if the nominations during on the 18th of November, if there were 12 seats that the government had uncontested, even then they would have to wait for the end of the process, which is on December 6th. And it's only then the prime minister would then start his new term. Um, the question of the youth, I'll be honest with you, this is the one that is probably giving me the most thinking, I think, and the one I'm prepared to spend the most time on, because I realize that all of those efforts that we are doing now would be in vain if the youth are not allowed to benefit. And at the same time, if they're going to benefit, they should be involved in the process. So the big question for us is, how do you get more youth involved? How do you get the young people? And I can tell you, they are completely scared. They don't want to be seen close to the UWP because they will not get the scholarships. I mean, this government is your mission stay.
Leading by fear.
The government is there. That's a terrible government. It is not easy. They will victimize these young people, even if they're qualified, even if they're better, even if they are superior. They will harm them. They will make their life miserable. So we have that's a serious problem. That's a serious issue. So I understand the hesitancy of the youth to come forward. We have to find ways to engage them, whether it means calling them out secretly, or we'll find ways to interact with them, because we need to sell them on what we're trying to do to their benefit. So we'll have to find creative ways of doing this. We'll have to find them on their WhatsApp. We'll have to find them on TikTok. We'll have to find them on Twitter, wherever they reside, wherever they are, we're gonna find them. We might not be able to bring them out en masse in public because of that fear of victimization, but we have to find creative ways to meet with them. But I fully understand your concern and your question. We absolutely have to get the youth involved in what you're doing in the United Workers' Party.
Yes, and thank you for that, Dr. Fountain. And as we get ready to wind down, it has been many years of UWP and an uphill battle. And we just want to know, why do you keep fighting? What is keeping the United Workers' Party in this fight? And I know that you are very energized now because we saw the audience at the delegates conference, in addition to 500 viewers on Facebook Live. So I know that in itself is very energizing. But in general, what keeps United Workers' Party in this fight?
I think it's just the commitment, and for that, I really would like to thank our trustees, to thank Mr. Edison James, for example, Honorable Lennox Linton, Nicholas George, Danny Luge, Sparks John, Ezekiel Basil. These guys who've stayed there, man, they've fought. I mean, I came in 2013. I left in 2017. I left them there. I came back. They're still there. They're still there fighting, and I met them, in fact, when I came in 2013. Guys like Sparks John and so on. These guys who have just given their all for this country, everything they have, and in the belief that, even if the field is set against you, it's not a level playing field. Yet they have that belief that someday something will happen, that will get that breakthrough. It is very disheartening, I can tell you, to be in opposition for all of those years, and to see the struggles that you have to go through. Your own personal development is, it has not been easy, but they are persevered. And I think ultimately that sacrifice that they've made, not giving up, is going to pay off. And that is my belief. I believe ultimately we'll get the opportunity to show the Dominican public what this party has to offer, as we did in the past, and be able to do it in a way that people can only be proud of us, because we believe in transparency, we believe in honesty, we believe in it's not about making wealth or building wealth for ourselves, but in developing the people of Dominica. And I think that will be the ultimate thank you. When we're able to get in that position to really help Dominica and to help Dominicans, and for the thousands of Dominicans who are living overseas, in the diaspora, who want to come back to Dominica, who want to build their homes. I mean, there is no reason why Dominicans in the diaspora can't build vacation homes in Dominica. Why not build a vacation home in Dominica in a nice spot somewhere in Layu or in Port Cassé or in Grand Fort? Just build a nice little home that you can come
And
back
make it
to.
an Airbnb, generate income, employ people.
Why not? Why not? So, and I know that the Dominicans who have the means, who want to do it, but it's just because of the climate. The health situation needs to be addressed. That's a very important one that we must address. The health system. So it's about taking care of those problems. But I believe ultimately, after all of that sacrifice, it will pay off. I do not believe that God, after all of the sacrifice, that God is going to allow this country to go the way of the dogs. No, I honestly believe that there will come a time very soon when the United Workers' Party will be able to assume office. And all of those persons who have been so selfless, who have been so supportive. And as you said, yesterday was tremendous. I mean, people came out in the numbers, and you saw a cross section of Dominican society. You saw the professional, you saw the fishermen, you saw the public servants. Just an absolute cross section of Dominican society, and that to me embodies what Dominica is all about. And the continued struggle is for that purpose, and ultimately, I'm convinced that we will survive, and we will not only survive, but we will overcome,
Yeah,
and we will
and
build this country.
Daniel George says it best. Frederick Douglass said, "Without struggles, there is no success." So, as we get ready to wind down, Dr. Fountain, any contact information you would like to share for the party? How folks can get in touch with the party?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, we have our website is a very useful place that you can go, and there's contact information on that website. It's uwpteamdominica.com, uwpteamdominica.com. Um, Sorry,
Okay.
uwpdominica.com, not
Okay.
UWP Team Dominica, sorry.
Yeah, I'll put it in the
UWP
comment section.
uwpdominica.com. Yeah, that's our website. We have a Facebook presence as well. In the next few days, we'll be working to beef those up so that it becomes more prevalent and you can actually find us a lot more easily. We'll also be looking at doing our Twitter feed as well, and so that people can be kept abreast of our progress. They'll be able to follow us as we unfold our different plans and so yeah, there's a lot, but for now you can do that. Of course, I'm online under my name, Thomson Fontaine, on Facebook, so people can reach us that way as well. Most of the members of the United Workers' Party have Facebook pages, their own personal Facebook pages, so you can reach them that way as well. If you reach one of us, then we can pass the message. Those that are willing, those who have ideas for us, and you can drop me a line, engage me. I mean, I am behind. I can tell you right now, Simon, I'm behind in my responses. I got up this morning to a telephone call at 6 o'clock.
Mm.
Somebody forgot.
Wow.
Somebody forgot it was 6 o'clock and called me, but they were so anxious to talk to me, and it started that way 6, and it has been going on for the entire day. I'm trying to respond to text messages. So if you sent me a text telling me congratulations, I've not yet gotten back to you, I will do that. I'm just behind because it's hundreds and hundreds of them. I'm trying to do it as quickly as
Sounds like you
possible.
need an assistant.
Yeah. You want to volunteer? That would be fun. That'd be nice.
As you can see, I
Yeah.
have my hands full.
Yeah, but seriously, it will probably come to that at some point because it's. But I'm trying to respond. I think if people take the time to text you, they deserve a response, and that is my philosophy, right? I will not just ignore somebody. The fact that they take their time to type you a few lines, I think out of just normal courtesy, you should respond. So I'm getting to do that. If you have something to offer in terms of a suggestion, something that you want to contribute to the party as well, drop me a note. We'd love to hear from you. So Yeah, so Simon, thanks for the opportunity. A lot of faithful supporters of ours tonight who've supported the party over the years, who've given up their time, their energy to help, just to help in whatever way. I recognize some of those names. I thank you guys for really supporting us and for being there with us. We are on the front lines, but it is just as important to have this army behind that support. It makes so much difference, so much a huge difference when there are people who care about the party, who care about Dominica, and who are prepared to sacrifice along with us. So,
Yes.
just reach out to us, and yeah, we'll be happy to stay in touch.
Yes, well, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, we wish you all the best as the new leader of the United Workers' Party. And we want to thank you again for joining us here on Push Past 10 to do this interview to inform and to educate our people on Push Past 10. Of course, I am Simone Matthew, and we want to thank the audience, our incredible audience, for your contribution. We hope that you will continue to follow and support the work that we do to move Dominica forward. And Dr. Fontaine, if there's one recommendation I could provide is to stay visible, stay present on social media, even if you're doing work on the ground. Let us out here. You know, how many thousands you had told me of us are in the diaspora? Something like 200,000.
Yes,
You know, I
yes,
always
at
come to you
least.
for my stats.
Yeah,
So if you guys are always wondering where I get my
yeah,
statistics from, now you know. So
yes, yes.
in terms of continuing to engage with us, and right here on Push Past 10 with our 19,000 visitors a month, we would love to continue to do the work that you have started in Dominica. So again, we want to thank you for being here, and we encourage you to share your final word as we wind down the program.
Well, mine is just to say thanks. Thanks to all of you. Thanks for your incredible support. There are many, many persons who supported us, supported me on social media, who expressed their view as to who the leader of the party should be. And for those of you who call, I know persons who call their friends in Dominica to encourage them to vote for me. So I'm truly appreciative of that. I am not underestimating the efforts of the diaspora in my own success to get to the head of the party. I hope I don't plan to disappoint you. To use the same work ethic that I have developed as a young child, having to go to the garden before starting school, go and fetch water before school, or change the animals, check out the trap to see if you caught a manicle the night before, and so on. Doing all of that, and just the work ethic that I have, and I can put towards now, in that particular work of restoring Dominica, restoring hope in our country, and building this country. I just want to thank all of you for your support, and I really want to encourage you to support the United Workers' Party, all right? We need your resources, we need your inputs, we need your ideas. Don't hesitate to reach out. We will respond to you. And let us just continue to build, all right? Let's continue to build together and work towards a better Dominica, because I believe ultimately we all love this piece of rock, and ultimately is ours to build. So let us work towards doing that.
Yes, thank you so
And to
much.
you,
So
Simon, what can I say? Big thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time and for inviting me. And I promised you a long time ago that you'd be my first official interview. And I'm really happy that we could do that tonight. And I just really want to thank you.
yeah, and I think it speaks volume, Dr. Fountain, that you wanted your first official interview to be on a social media platform, because it speaks of your willingness to embrace technology, your willingness to be open to different ways of doing business. So again, congratulations. Thank you for joining us. I try to get some rest. I know you have another packed week, and you know how God knows how much longer you will have to keep pushing through those days and nights.
Yes.
So try to
Yes,
get
indeed. In
some
fact,
rest.
just to mention our press conference, our first
Yes.
official press conference is taking place tomorrow. All of the team, the leadership team, will be present at the press conference. It starts at 11 a.m. in the morning. It will be carried live on our page, on the Facebook page. So, as well as the different, emo and so on, DNO will be carrying it. So, we encourage all of you to listen in as well.
Yes, yes. So thank you. Have yourself a wonderful evening, and we will be sure to continue to follow your progress.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
so
And thank
much.
you,
Have a good
everyone, for
night.
joining us.
Thanks. Bye bye.
All right. Take care. Good night.
All right. Good.
Mhm.